Hi. So, Miyamoto views video games as products, not works of art. And I agree with him, and I will tell you why I agree with him in just a moment. Here come the comments. But I agree with him. I really do. During Nintendo's latest shareholder QA meeting, Shigeru Miyamoto stressed the importance for developers to work for the consumer, not for your boss. And that's a great idea. Ensuring that teams can produce games that will satisfy players. Now, he is looking at that from the idea of, if you are going to make a game, focus on the demographic that game is being pitched to. If you're going to make a horror game, focus on your horror audience. Don't try to bring in other types of audiences, whatever. Focus on that main core audience. Because if you're trying to make a horror game and you're catering to like some expanded audience beyond that, you lose the plot. And we've already seen this happen in multiple instances. So I mean, I can't say that he's not wrong in that aspect. But if you're making a fighting game, cater to fighting game players. If you're making a puzzle game, cater to puzzle game players. You're making games for that audience. The whole purpose of you making a game is to get that game in the hands of people that are interested in that type of product. So if you know that there's a demographic of people that you're selling to, make that game for that specific demographic. Don't worry about anything beyond that. Just make a good game. So afterwards, ex-Nintendo developer Takaya Imamura added his own 2 cents to the conversation and stated that Miyamoto has always viewed games as products, not works of art, and believes that his background studying industrial art helped shape that viewpoint. This goes to an article in Automaton that I'm going to actually take a look at for a moment. We're going to take a bit of a sidetrack. Independent game developer and Nintendo veteran Takaya Imamura recently shared musings about his former colleague Shigeru Miyamoto, acclaimed creator of Mario and Legend of Zelda series, commenting on Miyamoto's excellence as a game designer. Imamura says Mr. Miyamoto studied industrial design at an art university and has viewed games as products, not works of art. I think that perspective is what leads to game development that's more aligned with the user. Now, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to put you on game real quick. So industrial design is the professional practice of designing products, devices, objects, and services used by millions of people around the world every day. Industrial designers typically focus on the player's appearance, functionality, and manufacturability of a product. Though they are often involved far more into the development cycle, all of this ultimately extends in the overall lasting value and experience a product or service provides for end users. Every object that you interact with on a daily basis in your home, office, school, or public setting is a result of the design process. During this process, myriad discussions are made by an industrial designer and their team that are aimed at improving your life through well-executed design. Now, this kind of falls in line with what I was going to basically say. Now, this is my personal feelings on this. I feel that video games are not art. And I say this because video games have more of a craft appearance. So I feel that video games are closer to craft than they are to art. Art is just the aesthetic end. When you say video games are art, most people are looking at the images of games, the backgrounds, the character designs, the aesthetics or whatever. When I say video games are craft, I'm thinking about the functionality, the gameplay loop, the enemy placement, the other aspects of it, the design and philosophy end of it. There's a foreign function that exists in games that's not necessarily found in movies or books or any other medium. You are an active participant in getting a game from point A to point B. From start to conclusion, you are the most active participant in seeing this game through to completion. And that's more of a dynamic aspect of video games than anything else. I know people will try to comment and basically say that, well, this game is art and this game is art and this game is art, and that's all fine and good. But I think craft works better because craft is form and function. Craft is aesthetics meeting actual functionality and process. Craft is actually like building a well-made sword. Like you can have an ornate crafted sword that looks beautiful but can cut through like solid wood blocks like nothing. That's form and function. That's what craft is. Craft is creating something with beauty and purpose. And that's why I feel that video games are more of a craft than art. Art is limited by just the surface level qualities. Craft is like a full experience. And also I feel that when you call video games craft, you are involving every aspect of that game. You are involving the programmers, you are involving the writers, the scenario developers. You're involving the technicians, the people that are actually in every step of the process. When we call video games art, we're only focusing on the artist end of it. And I also feel that when we label video games as art, we are trying to validate that by putting it into a category. We don't need to validate games. Games already have their own level that exists beyond anything that or any other medium that we have. Miyamoto himself has often talked about this consumer-driven approach, and as Imamura mentions, prior to joining Nintendo, Miyamoto earned a degree in the industrial design at Kanazawa College of Art. As opposed to unique works of art, industrial design pursues both functionality and design within various constraints related to cost, mass production, and user friendliness. True to his academic background, Miyamoto is more interested in coming up with ideas and cool concepts for commercial products. When he first joined Nintendo, he was initially in charge of designing things like educational toys, playing cards, and McDonald's toys. Yes, the Ultra Hand is Miyamoto's design. He had a general idea of things that looked cool and actually did cool things. The Ultra Hand, when he introduced the Ultra Hand, it was like, it was basically just the grabby hand things, but it had that extending thing because it was on hinges and it extended out to grab things. Great idea, great form, great function. But this is the type of person that would create games like that. Now, don't think of it as cult of personality. Miyamoto's a god, blah, blah, blah. No, it's Miyamoto can come up with these things because his brain actually works in a way that creates ideas and turns those into things like what we got, like Mario and Zelda or whatever. That's not basically worship or like idol worship or any of that stuff. You're recognizing the capabilities of another person. Like game recognized game, that type of mentality. I think this is more of I respect the shit out of his ideas because from one creative to another, I can respect what he's doing and I understand what exactly is going on here. As Nintendo entered the game industry in earnest, Miyamoto applied this mindset to video game design as he analyzed what made people in arcades keep replaying hits like Space Invaders. One of the answers he arrived at is that their design made it obvious what you're supposed to do regardless of who's playing in pursuit of a similar hit. Miyamoto came up with Nintendo's breakthrough title Donkey Kong with the simple self-contained design of Gorilla Runs Away with Girl. So Satoru Iwata described how Miyamoto would test his own design choices by finding someone who knew nothing about his game, handing them a controller and just watching them from behind without a single word of explanation. That's actually another great idea. If you want to get a general idea of whether you're going somewhere or you're doing something, grab somebody that doesn't know much about games or doesn't know much about what you're doing and just let them play and let them figure it out in their heads as you are watching or whatever. It kind of gives you an idea of like setting up the gameplay loop. So I was talking about Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, and there's a gameplay loop that actually shows up in the game. Like the enemy placement is perfect in that game. This is just going off of me playing the demo and seeing some of the more intricate images that Dotimu's put out or videos that Dotimu put out. And there's the enemy placement creates a sort of like gameplay loop where you're taking elements or whatever, or the enemy placement kind of helps with there's a kind of attack in the air where you spin around and you bounce off of that, and it actually gives you a certain boost in height. There's certain enemy placements that are there to get you to go to certain areas of the game in order to get like certain bonus things or whatever. That's part of the gameplay loop. You're trying to give people an opportunity to utilize the tools they have in their kit in order to get them to where you want them to go, whatever. It's almost like you're and I've kind of talked about this when I was talking about the this might be a Throwback Thursday thing. I was talking about David Jaffe a while back, and David Jaffe was talking about the Metroid thing. And I was trying to explain how the concept of how the developer can kind of lead you towards things or put down breadcrumbs to lead you towards certain things without having to hold your hand. And there's a lot of that there. There's a lot of breadcrumbs in Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. It's brilliant because once you actually get into the creative side of gaming or game development, you start to see those things and you're like, man, that's dope. That's a really great idea. They really kind of somebody actually is sitting down and playing old school games and trying to like figure out how this works or whatever. So, and that's the form and function. It goes right back to the form and function discussion. He watches them play and checks in detail how they respond, playing without any previous knowledge. He finds out what they don't understand, what they let past, what triggers they miss. However experienced he may be, he never drops the notion that if players don't understand it, there is fault in the design I made. You're insightful enough to understand what exactly is going on, and I like that. It's kind of reminds me of my daughter and I. We all do this thing where she'll make stages in Super Mario Maker, and she'll hand them to me and have me beat them, and she'll watch. And then she has a worse poker face than Shigeru Miyamoto, but she tends to look at things, whatever. And if I wind up like kind of cheating, or she thinks I'm cheating, but I'm really just kind of playing around and figuring out where my boundaries are, what I can and can't do. It's something I've always done since I was a kid. I was like, okay, what are my boundaries? What can I pull off and what can I pull off? And then I'll wind up doing something or jumping above where the roadblocks or whatever she has, or figuring out how to get past those without having to deal with them, and she gets flustered. But it's one of those things where those are the things that you kind of do in that loop in order to figure out how to make your game better, how to improve things. So as for Miyamoto's nature as a creator, Iwata once commented that he is often misunderstood, very artistic person who is spontaneously coming up with ideas through bursts of inspiration. But that is not all the case. Mr. Miyamoto is extremely logical, but that's not all. He has both a very left brain logical way of thinking and a kind of wild imaginative ideas that someone who studied art would have. Meanwhile, Miyamoto himself has humbly denied being a genius, emphasizing that this approach is to creating entertainment that is in fact very methodical. So yeah, he's being there's a left brain and kind of right brain notion to this, where he's trying to be a creative but also be analytical in his process. That's not a video game god thing either. That's just kind of how creatives deal with things. As an artist, I have to analytically think about like certain poses, certain concepts, certain like other things, whatever. Like if you're drawing a character and you have to kind of commit to drawing through and getting the process of figuring out how this character would look in 3D space in certain poses. That's the analytical aspect, and that's something that every artist needs to know or understand in order to be better at their craft. So I mean, he's basically doing everything that an artist would do, but he's applying it to games or video games and the concept of video games, and I'm kind of here for this. I'm definitely here for this. While game design has come to be widely recognized as an art form, and games are works of art intertwining with other fields like filmography, Miyamoto and Nintendo have stuck to this notion as games as a product throughout the years. You can argue that this is merely a matter of semantics, as some of the main things Nintendo values, like level design and fun mechanics, may as well be called art. That goes back to what I was saying. I feel like you're trying to quantify that as art in order to make some validity to it, whereas video games don't really need validity. They're video games. They're They're there. They've been there for a long time. Before we even got onto this weird case of trying to call it art or think of it as art, there was this whole notion that video games were cool and they were like interesting ways to pass the time. They did things that a lot of things didn't do, and I think video games can stand on their own without having to be classified as art. But if we are going to classify them as something, I feel like craft is probably the better notion. However, the underlying difference seems to be in the intent to create an interactive toy for the consumer as entertainment rather than a product of the creator's artistic vision. No, I feel like there's a balance there. And the balance is what makes it craft. Having it be balanced and actually be a mix of different things coming together to create something that has form and function, that's more important to me than classifying this as art. The more I actually read about this, the more I kind of understand his mindset, the more I kind of look at this, I'm like, yeah, you're right. And this justifies my statement that games are craft, and they're stronger when you refer to them as craft than art. You can go on believing that it's art, and that's perfectly fine. It just doesn't bother me one way or the other. Like, people will believe video games are art regardless because they feel like that will justify video games' validity in their eyes, and I really don't agree with that. To me, it cheapens the concept of what a video game is. I'll probably do more videos on that in the future. Anyways, thank you for joining for this. See you next boss fight. Take care.